Hello, welcome everybody to the Lawyers Legal Transformation Week opening webinar. We have a very exciting program for you today with a number of legal ops leaders that are going to talk about legal function transformation. So the format for today is we're going to each have some brief introductions. We have about 45 minutes of content, and then we'll have a final 15 minutes of Q&A. So let me start off the introductions. My name is Gabriel Buigas. I'm your moderator today. I'm EVP and of legal and compliance solutions for Integreon and ALSP. But I think it's also important to point out that I spent most of my career in-house, and over a 20-year in-house career, I led a number of legal function transformation initiatives. So I'm very excited about today's topic. But let me introduce you to your panelists. They're all very accomplished on this topic. Isabel, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Isabel. I'm Head of Legal Operations at Robert Walters, which is a global talent solutions company. All in all, we're kind of a team of just under 40 globally. And I've been in this role for about a year now. I was the kind of first dedicated legal ops position within the department. But kind of if we're talking about kind of team, I actually just operate as a solo legal ops professional with a couple of administrative direct reports. And I think that it's also kind of useful to know that I also sit within our senior legal management team, which I found definitely for kind of my role as legal ops kind of really crucial, kind of giving me visibility into our department priorities and kind of really positioning legal ops as kind of a leadership position and not just kind of as a support function. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Isabel. Marcelo, you're next on my screen, so please.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel, and hello, everyone. So my name is Marcelo Peviani. I'm a vice president with legal operations and strategic services with Equinix. We are a team of approximately 40 legal professionals in this group, and we are responsible for both the traditional legal operations capabilities. So think about financial operations, vendor management, technology, and digital transformation, as well as a team of shared services legal professionals supporting the company, particularly with transactional categories of support. And we also partner with the business operations enterprise group for company-wide transformation. Nice being here.
Thank you, Marcelo. Hazel, you're next on the list.
Hi, I'm Hazel Butler, and I lead legal operations and transformation at Vodafone. My team is quite broad. We have people looking at transformation, PMO, who are onshore, and we also have people in our captive shared service centre, Voice, that we're very proud of as well. And there's about 10 or so people on there. We get involved in lots of different things and business partner with other functions like HR and finance. We work very closely, and we have some very good technology business partners too. I also sit on the leadership team and work very closely with our GC, and really good to hear what you say, Isabel, as well, about being a valued member of the leadership team for the legal department.
Thank you, Hazel. And we have one more panelist, Sophie, that's joining by voice today.
Thanks, Gabriel. So hi, I'm Sophie Pern. Apologies for the lack of visual. But I am the head of innovation and transformation team in the legal and secretariat function of Lloyds Banking Group. So my innovation and transformation team works really closely with our delivery team, who are perhaps the more traditional ops team, with a lens of really delivering our future-ready strategy across a relatively large in-house legal and secretariat function.
Thank you, Sophie. And with that, let's jump right in to our first question. So a number of our panelists have been actually working diligently on legal transformation inside their respective companies. And so one of my first questions is going to be, how do you go about organizing yourself to initiate and successfully run a legal transformation project? And given the varying sizes of the legal ops functions among our panelists, we'll have interesting perspectives on that question. So Isabel, since you were at Department of One, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure, I'll be happy to. So I think kind of I think like everyone, we're kind of in that kind of environment where we're being asked to do more with less. And so I think kind of our transformation is really spurred on by that kind of that need to kind of have to do more, kind of balance a really, really busy workload, whilst also not kind of increasing your headcount. And so kind of the transformation is really focusing on that kind of process optimization. And I think, as I've mentioned, I'm just a team of one. So I'm completely reliant on making sure that I bring my team along with me for this kind of transformation journey. And I think just to talk a little bit about when I joined my team, they had already tried to do quite a big transformation project, and there was some success. I think there was a lot of kind of enthusiasm, but it really stalled. And so one of the key drivers for kind of me joining was to really spearhead this and figure out why it hadn't really gone anywhere and what we can actually do and give that a bit more structure. So kind of at the start of that transformation, it was kind of me kind of using that as a foundation rather than completely starting from scratch, but then figuring out what tools our team really needed to kind of get that transformation kind of moving. So I think that, the biggest reason why this can be really, really difficult when you don't have a kind of big team and you're just trying to do this kind of at the side of your desk is it's really, really hard to do that kind of transformation when you're not giving it the kind of real space. So me coming in was really about identifying kind of clear roles and responsibilities within each of the kind of project teams that we had set up, and also kind of giving them some kind of actual project management support. And that was me really using my kind of admin team to kind of train up and use it for that kind of role. So we kind of built it into 4 different kind of key initiatives that we wanted to do, each with a different kind of focus. And created real kind of project timelines to work on these different elements of transformation. And I think that also kind of just to mention a point that I think is kind of really important when we're thinking about kind of transformation and getting kind of a team involved, particularly if you're with someone that is having to rely so heavily on the team, is it's about also thinking about my team's development and what they're getting out of this as well, kind of really making sure that the team understand that this is for their kind of, they have some leadership opportunities. They get to kind of really gain exposure to kind of strategic initiatives beyond that, just that day-to-day kind of legal workload. So I think that was kind of a real key success for kind of getting the team along with me here. And another kind of point I think that's really, I have found really key, and what was also I think missing from previously, was the accountability and kind of really celebrating and recognizing achievements. So kind of really considering showing people when you're actually achieving something, let's mark that, let's show everyone that that's happened. And I think that's the key, that you can kind of say, hey, this is what we've done, and we can kind of build on that and celebrate that. So yeah.
Thank you. No, all very good points. And I know I'm going to move on to Sophie, because I know, Sophie, you've been on a multi-year journey of transformation as part of a broader initiative, but please share your thoughts on how this has gone.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Gabriel. I think, the group as a whole is partway through a significant transformation as an organisation, which has been really actually helpful from a cultural perspective, in that we are working within a really fast-paced culture of change as an organisation. And so that helps legal colleagues and secretariat colleagues to really understand delivery, moving at pace, and working with the structures that we have across the group that are in place and designed to help us deliver. And I guess that's a real potentially contrast to Isabel, in the sense that we kind of have a huge machine behind us from a change perspective. But taking it into legal and secretariat and thinking about how we can harness that and what our drivers for transformation are, we've really focused on being a data-driven organisation, optimising our use of technology, and really ensuring that our colleagues have the skills of the future. So that's the area of focus for legal and secretariat. And we drive change within legal and secretariat by a very clearly defined, senior team-sponsored 90-day projects, using agile delivery methods, but probably not in the more traditional agile sense that we might see across the organisation. Whilst we have perhaps a larger ops function than Isabel and flying solo, we do still federate delivery out and engage our wider community in the change projects. But I think the secret and the first sort of steps to success are of having real clarity of scope, making sure you understand the impact of what you're trying to achieve, and with that clarity you can really move at pace.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Marcelo, as managing a team of 40, you have a little bit more resources and the transformation initiative that you're helping to drive inside of Equinix. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your approach to that project and how it's going?
Yeah, Gabriel, I think that if you're a team of 2, 3, or 40, I think that the foundations are very much the same, and I would say that the challenges will probably be the same as well. I like what Isabel mentioned about like the problems that she's solving for, and I would say that we are all tackling those as an industry, right? Like the higher workloads, the complexity of the workloads, the expectation from our stakeholders in terms of speed of delivery as well as quality of delivery, and then the budgets that we are seeing across the board being challenged. So that's a very much of an industry-wide challenge that we need to solve. I think that when we approach transformation, and we've been doing that at Equinix for quite a few years. When I joined a bit more than 2 years ago, I really wanted to step back and work with our chief legal officer and our leadership team in terms of validating our value driver, and really starting with the why. Like, what is it that we, why is it that we have our capabilities stood up and structured the way they are? What is the value that we add to the business? And then thinking about the moment that our business is going through, what are the most important capabilities that we have as a legal organization that we can influence and help the business achieve results? And out of that, we step back and look at our legal services catalog. How is it that we are resourcing against that catalog, the areas that are delivering more value to the business? Where is it that we have the gaps? And then looking at efficiencies that we can add to the processes, looking at our sourcing model or technology portfolio, talent strategy and whatnot. So I think that having that framework in a way, kind of like capturing these items under a structured framework that deliver clarity in terms of where you are, what is the most important things that you should be doing to achieve a goal that is clear for everyone. I think that that's paramount, and that helps a lot with change management, so that you have that destination that you're aiming to achieve that is known by everyone, and that you can also hold the team accountable for achieving that. And then for us, I'll give one example, which is the lead to cash transformation, which is what is really important for our enterprise right now. And that legal is helping the business in reimagining lead to cash, so really the sales cycle and the revenue processes, in a way that we are delivering a better experience to our customers. So it starts with legal, even reimagining our customer-facing website in a way that we are telling the story of how to do business with Equinix, all the way through staffing and aligning the segmentation of tasks and allocating the right tasks to the right level of talent in the right teams. And then looking at automation and how is it that we can use automation to better integrate us with the business, to enable us with the right insights, and then to make sure that we are removing work that we can deliver through self-service from the desks of our legal professionals. And then looking at the metrics and what is the data telling us? Are we getting things right? Should we course correct? And how is it that we can really embed that culture of continuous improvement in our teams? What I would say that is challenging in terms of elements that are, I would say, not as tangible as the ones that we typically discuss in these webinars and as an industry, I would say on the change management is really navigating fear, uncertainty, and the team being willing to abandon what made them successful in the past to embrace new capabilities, new ways of working that we believe that are going to make us successful for the future. And that's where we spend a lot of time as well. So let me pause here.
All right. No, great, Marcelo. Thank you. Hazel, I know Vodafone has long been known for legal innovation. Tell us a little bit about what's the approach for you and your team on legal transformation.
Yeah, so nothing new from what's actually been said, but just to note as well that Vodafone is undergoing a huge transformation, and in fact the world is, if we look at the geopolitical landscape, and that is being felt by all business at the moment. And so I think the leadership team are now calling on their legal ops leaders to kind of help show them the way, and to kind of lift the veil of the team on what they're doing, and driving more metrics, as Marcelo said. But one of the things that does make transformation really successful, and I won't repeat what everyone said, is to try to get everybody involved, try to make them all a little bit opsy, as we like to say, and as I heard someone at Microsoft say, is that it's not legal ops' transformation, it's the whole teams, and they've all got to come on the journey. And again, as Marcelo said, it's being really, really clear about what your objectives are, what is the why, what is your vision, what is your strategy, and ensuring that you have clear leadership sponsorship and support, that they're driving it with the team, and so that they're all coming along and also driving it themselves. But yeah, everything that everyone said.
No, great. And I may delve a little bit into that question that all of you guys have said, just because navigating change management is so critical to a successful legal transformation, and also understanding your corporate culture and how you have to position things in your corporate culture. So anything else to add on this topic, just because to me, it's just so critical between success and failure. I know I'll start again with Isabel, just focused on the change management. How do you overcome some of that change resistance that can occur in transformation? How do you get everybody to align well with what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we have already kind of touched on it, that I think from a kind of a team point of view, it's definitely about that involving people early on, involving them at the outset. I think people feel a lot more kind of empowered when they're involved with the kind of solution design from day one. And I think kind of really getting people to kind of speak out and volunteer for these kind of opportunities has always been helpful, because it kind of builds that ownership. And I think it's also the kind of articulating, what we're solving, how it fits into the strategy, and kind of putting that back in at various different stages, and reminding people of what they're doing to really help kind of the department or the organization goals, as well as their own kind of point, and as I kind of touch on their own kind of development opportunities as well. And I think another kind of part that legal ops, it can be particularly effective at, is that kind of connecting across the different departments, kind of being that touch point, kind of tapping in, I guess, to also what Hazel said, but you can be kind of showing other people how it's done. You can also be, I think, seen as quite an independent kind of piece away, and really being able to kind of, I think, articulate the benefits to people in the kind of leadership, whether that's your kind of CFO or, whoever's kind of in charge there. I think that's a really good way to kind of bring those stakeholders on early, articulate the benefits, and make it clear that when you're doing these broader projects, if, say, for example, there's a tech project or something, that this isn't like legal in a silo. This isn't a legal project. It's about benefiting a whole kind of company organization, and really kind of being able to articulate that.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm going to switch to you a little bit here, Hazel, because I know you touched about a little bit on the change management aspect. What have you seen has been a successful strategy to ensuring that you can overcome kind of resistance and getting people to embrace the change of what you're trying to accomplish?
Yes, so it is helping them come on that journey. So, for example, we're recently demoing some GenAI tools, and it's ensuring that we've got key people in the team talking about the tools to the rest of the team, trialing them, but being vocal about it. And even when we rolled out Copilot within the team, what we did was we didn't just roll it out. What we did was we had weekly workshops together for each of the team members to discuss, how are they using it? What have they found helpful? So they're not just using it in different silos. And we found that just by bouncing off each other, because obviously with these tools, there is sort of no set way to use them yet, so we're all learning along. So it's just bringing them on that journey, and they're almost feeling the way to find it, and it's also exciting, isn't it, at the end of the day? So I think I cannot overemphasize just getting the team on that journey, and almost sort of telling the rest of the team what they need to do in order to transform.
Great. Thank you, Hazel. Marcelo, I know you touched a little bit about on this, but anything more to add? Just because I know change management, even when you're even some of the things you're describing on the Lead to Cash initiative and the various stakeholders and everything else, what have been some best practices that you've learned on how to navigate change management and getting people on board?
Yeah, Gabriel, I think that changing from an attorney role, like an in-house counsel role, to legal operations, I think that change management has been my really biggest learning. This is I cannot emphasize enough the value of effective change management and how critical it is for you to achieve success really with everything that you're driving as a legal operations leader. I think that first, you have to know your audience. And there's a study by Dr. Larry Richard, which some of you may know. It's from the early 2000s. It's called Herding Cats, the Attorney Personality Reviewed, or something like that. But it's a brilliant study. And I was even taking a look at some of the data points that he was emphasizing. But over the general population, as attorneys, we are dealing with a group that is more skeptical, that operates with more sense of urgency, that is less social, less resilient, and more autonomous. And that's a perfect storm type of combination for change management. And I think that that's the first thing that we need to acknowledge, that our population that we're working with inside of our legal teams is going to require more from us probably than other supporting functions and the business. And we need to invest in a way that is proportional to I would say, the effort that is needed from us. So I think that that's one. In terms of my battle scars and things that I have learned with change management throughout the years, I would say that really having people to see the change through the lens of the what's in it for me and something that will make them successful at the end of a transformation, at the end of a project, is so critical. And I think that what I've seen historically is that legal organizations have over-rotated on the value of relationships with their stakeholders, and they lag behind on demonstrating performance through metrics. So I think that that's a great area of opportunity for all of us to have our legal professionals to use more data to tell their stories of success to their own stakeholders, and do that through the lens of the results that you want to achieve through the change. And I have seen that is really positive for the business stakeholders who understand better the value that legal organizations are adding to their processes, as well as to the legal professionals who can tell the story of why they are important beyond just stakeholders liking them and trusting them. And that has been really great to see. But at the end of the day, I think that you have to think about accountability and really holding people accountable, particularly if you have situations where people are stopping the bus all the time or even throwing wrenches. You have to hold people accountable and have the air cover from the highest level of the enterprise to do that, and understand that your population is going to behave like the behaviors are going to fall under a bell curve. Some people are going to be very excited about change, some will not care, and some will be actively resistant to the change. And you may end up losing some people as you transform, which should not come as a surprise and should not discourage you.
Yeah, no, well said, Marcelo. And I know, turning to Sophie, I know that you've emphasized the importance of culture. I know in our prep discussions and the need to align and get in front of change management. But is there anything else you would add around change management, given the criticality of overcoming resistance to transformation?
Yeah, I think just to sort of interesting to hear others' takes, and I don't want to repeat it, but I do think that the people element is so critical to successful change. You know, strategy isn't something that happens over there. We're all part of it and we're all accountable for it. And driving that message as a drumbeat through legal and secretariat is really important. I guess to bring it to life on a project that, you know, we had where people were so critical in delivery, we built and rolled out a legal front door a few years ago to triage workflow, but also to automate responses for legal advice. And a core part of the success of that project was, as Isabel touched on, having a small focus group of users who fed into the design and requirements stage of that product. So really getting a sense of ownership from an end-to-end perspective in that change process, because they also ran through supported testing. And we sort of had a layered approach to using colleagues as our early adopters, so the people at the start of that bell curve, making them champions to communicate about the product across the teams. I think it's about identifying within your function who are your curious cats, who are the people that are going to go out there, embrace new, really start to sort of democratically drive change, as well as making sure that everybody understands that we're all responsible for the change and for moving our strategy forward. But I think, you know, the lens of looking solely at ROI or benefits cases or business cases, particularly for technology implementation, is sort of like over. We have to also think about the end user so carefully and getting their buy-in to make sure they're using the fantastic product and innovation and transformation that we're all doing.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophie, for that. So the next question we're going to explore with the panel is, you know, given that, you know, Hazel's point about we do live in interesting times around, so what does legal function of the future look like, and how does legal ops help enable that journey toward the future? Because we, you know, there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on in the geopolitical environment. There's a lot going on technology and technology disruption. So Hazel, what are your views on what the future looks like, and how, and what are you doing to help your organization navigate it?
So I think the future is going to be far more data led. I think the teams are just going to have to get used to ensuring that they're more cognizant about showing the value that they're driving in the organization. I think again, we were on a wave, and now I think there's another wave coming in terms of how the legal functions have to prove that they're being efficient, but not only being efficient, but being effective and actually delivering value. I think it's really important, and not to kind of demean what the function is in terms of it. You know, it's not just a support function. It seems quite trite because it's kind of what we were talking about 5 years ago, but I think it's having a resurgence, so to speak. So I think that, you know, I think it's back to basics in terms of that. And I think we're probably going to have to be running our teams more like a law firm in terms of like, what are we doing? Who are we doing it for in the future as well? So I was speaking to a provider, a spend management provider, and I said, well, you know, can the tool track what our internal teams are doing? And they said, well, most people move in-house to move away from that. And I said, well, I don't think that's, you know, I don't think that's going to be the situation in the future. I think we need to have that detail about where our teams are adding that value, and we need to be able to show that and demonstrate that. And then I think at the same time, well, obviously it will be expected that the teams are using these tools. If they're not using these tools, then, you know, there is no room for them in your team, because the people or the team members who decide not to use these tools are going to be left behind. So it's almost like, if you think of Simon Sinek's early adopter curve, well, if you don't start to adopt quick, then you're out, basically, especially as we are now moving into from an employee's market into an employer's market as well. So we have to think of it with that lens too. So use it, or you'll be lost in the future. And then also, and we also discuss relationships as well. So as we are automating more of what we do, I think there will be a stronger focus in the future on how we are managing those relationships. I think it will become more important, that human element, I think, will be expected to spend more time in there, focusing on our interactions with our stakeholders, with our customers. Customers are demanding more, so are our stakeholders. So we will need to spend time there to kind of, business partner our way through that value. I don't think it is just data alone. It's important, we need it, but again, it's to be successful in the future, it's dialing up your technical acumen, and it's also dialing up that people element as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hazel. Sophie, how would you answer that question? What does the legal function of the future look like?
I mean, I'd love to have a complete answer, but I'll give my views, and I think I really, definitely agree with Hazel on a lot of it. Being data-driven, I think most legal ops functions have been focused on that, on automation and self-service, really thinking about how we move our teams up the value chain from a legal work perspective. There was a reference earlier in the session on being asked to do more with less, and I think that's sort of true across all organisations, and not just unique to legal. But I think perhaps where we're slightly different is what we want to be doing is doing the more complex, the higher value, really giving the value add. And so where we can use tools, where we can use self-service, automation, process improvements to, really support our lawyers being able to focus on the high value activity, that to me is sort of the quickest win from a future perspective. And I know we'll sort of potentially touch on AI. It would be foolish not to talk about AI in the space of this future of legal functions, but clearly maximising and optimising the technology available is definitely on the roadmap for the future.
No, absolutely. And the points that a number of folks have made about data is also very important, because having good data not only show the value of legal, but if you're going to take advantage of GenAI in the future, having good data sets is a critical component of that. So that'll increasingly become important for everybody. Isabel, how would you respond to the question?
I agree with a lot of what Hazel and Sophie said, though. I think, kind of being able to kind of show our value through data, I think, is going to be really important. Though actually, when Hazel said about running like a law firm, I was like, no. But I did agree with the people kind of focus at the end. I think the more that we do have things that help us kind of automate and help us kind of do our jobs efficiently, I think the more the focus is on being that real core kind of strategic partner to the business. And we're in such a good place in the legal team to really, I think, offer kind of more value add in that area. It's definitely something we're looking at the moment. So if we're thinking about, in legal, we're in kind of looking at all the risks of the department, the whole organization, but like, how can we use that data more effectively to help our business kind of grow? Can we do these kind of personalized reports for different parts of the business that really kind of enable them to think about what they could be doing more in their areas? So I think it's about, when you're working in in-house legal department, you've got that opportunity to really, really fully embed and really kind of show that kind of actual value, be really strategic there, whereas like an external law firm just doesn't have that kind of same embedded relationship. So I think that's really, really key. And I think, again, it's kind of been touched upon, but it's, when we are utilizing these tools, I think if we're thinking about what legal ops can do, it's about making sure that our teams are really, really ready for those changes, make sure that they're really tooled up, they're really knowledgeable, so that when we want to start using them, they're able to kind of move with it, and we're not being left behind.
Great, thank you, Isabel. Marcelo.
Yeah, let me add a few thoughts here. First, I think that Hazel, when you mentioned like the mindset and really getting closer to what is potentially the model of law firms, I think that in my mind translates into running and managing legal as a business. And I think that that's really the core of the change that we are seeing, that CLOs, GCs are being held accountable to managing the legal function as a business unit. And I think that the success of this business is based on the value that you add to the enterprise and the resources versus the resources that you're consuming to add that value. So really the ROI. Why should the enterprise invest in legal? Why should we exist? And I think that the genesis of legal departments has been labor arbitrage. We started to exist as a department because of a desire to save dollars. And I think that we continue to face that pressure. And I think that what's happening now, and that's such a phenomenal, like an amazing moment to be part of the industry, is that paradigm shifting to one where we are able to demonstrate value as a business partner to our stakeholders internally, beyond just telling the story of how we're spending less dollars, because long term that is absolutely not sustainable. So I think that in the future, I see legal organizations operating in a way that is a lot more customer centric. So thinking about both your external customer as well as your internal stakeholders that you're supporting. I would say that we would be flipping from a model where the attorney and the legal professional is the delivery model of legal services, which I believe it's very artisanal and not scalable, to something that is far more driven by operational excellence principles, where you're packaging either legal services, legal solutions, or legal products, however you want to call those, but operating more with standards and just like leveraging excellence as you go. So building documented processes, building the metrics that you are going to be using to measure those processes, as it was mentioned, looking at opportunities to collaborate cross-functionally and add value to value streams, such as I was mentioning lead to cash. We can think about so many other value streams, right? Like source to pay, from product prototyping to go to market. Like legal can be present and adding value in so many steps of the business end-to-end processes. And I would see legal organizations much more embedded and driving that together with their stakeholders. I would say that risk aversion is something that legal organizations should learn how to operate with that better as well, meaning that we should shift from a mindset of delivering maximum quality to mitigate all potential risks to one that we are being much more intentional about allocation of resources against the risk that we are mitigating and the quality that is expected from the processes. And at the end of the day, really just like having that continuous improvement mindset, so that change is less traumatic and it becomes less sporadic, like less of a blue moon type of event, to something that legal professionals are embracing as part of their permanent operating model, and to a certain extent, not even requiring legal ops to go and chase them to change and to improve, but that's coming from the lead practitioners themselves.
Now, those are excellent points, Marcelo. And I agree, from risk aversion to effective risk management is a much more important position to be, right? It's always said this, even back when I was in-house, is spending $5 million to solve a $1 million problem doesn't make any sense. And people do need to think about things in that way. So we're getting to our final question before getting into Q&A. And I know a number of you guys have touched on it, but everybody's always curious about GenAI and where people are in the journey of GenAI and how accelerated is that journey? Where are we in the process? My own views before I start to ask the question is, I have seen tremendous amount of development between 2024, the beginning of 2024, and where we are in 2025. The technology is getting better and better. There are more use cases for it. And I'd like to talk to the panel to see what their perspective is on what they're seeing with GenAI. So let me start with Sophie on this one.
Thank you. I mean, I think, as you say, there's been a massive shift even in the last year. I think if we looked at this question maybe a year ago, we were very much sort of in a space of the market didn't feel like it was particularly mature, and we were at a stage in the hype cycle where actually understanding the real use case on the ground, particularly in-house, was potentially slightly harder to see. It was slightly less bottomed out. You know, GenAI and AI more broadly requires structured data, and so that sort of data-driven decisioning and all of the work that we're doing on getting our data in the right space to be able to use this technology is critical. And it also ties into the skill sets that our people will need in the future. Isabel touched on making sure that her colleagues were ready for these changes, and I think that's been a critical piece over the last 12 months and will continue as we all need skills in prompt engineering. We all need to understand how to use the tools and the products. I think in-house is probably 12 to 18 months behind law firms, maybe more, in the sense that we're seeing firms on our panel using GenAI and AI tooling much more extensively, and so there's a space for us in legal ops to understand how we can work and enable that utilisation, as well as how we internally can work across our organisation to understand, are there use cases and products being brought into the organisation that we can leverage? They don't need to be legal tech specific, but also, really honing in on what are our use cases, where do we think we would get the maximum benefit? Because I think as a sort of general, this is a very generalist statement, but the GenAI products remain fairly expensive in the market, and so being able to understand ROI from a business case perspective in-house is potentially slightly more challenging than for law firms.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. Isabel, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Sophie said there. I think that kind of the keys kind of touched on is about kind of really getting the team up to speed with that. We've also, like many other companies, have gone down the kind of co-pilot route and trying to get people using that. So I think that kind of building that digital kind of literacy and kind of mindset is as important as the technology itself, and creating that kind of culture that really embraces it rather than just kind of fears it. But I think that kind of we're obviously starting with those more practical applications, the kind of smaller stuff that hopefully kind of solve the problems that we have. But I think that kind of it's really about kind of showing the tangible benefits to kind of our daily work rather than kind of just implementing stuff for the sake of it. Because sometimes obviously it looks really shiny and new, and it's about, as Sophie really touched on, really creating those use cases and being really clear on how we want to use it and how it would actually benefit us. So yeah.
Thank you, Isabel. Hazel, you talked about some of the experimentation that Vodafone is doing with Copilot and the like. How have you seen over the last year the shift in the application of GenAI tools in your environment, or just generally in the market? What are you seeing?
Yes, so the development has been huge in the past year, as you mentioned, and I think for lawyers, I think we are, Vodafone, definitely we have a partnership with Microsoft. So we had we had 20 licenses, and we've been using Copilot for probably coming up to 2 years within the team, just with the early adopters program. And I do think it different people get different benefits from it. And so we've kind of done in the past couple of years is take the approach of learn as much as possible about it. What can it do? What are the limitations? What is the difference between a Gen AI and a machine learning AI and all of that stuff? So really get under the skin to understand, what it is that we need to do. And again, picking up on what what Sophie said about, we need to start looking at the information and information management that sits behind all of this stuff. And, those are the things that everyone can do now. And if you look at a lot of what the law firms are doing, a lot of them are actually creating their own tools. If you ask most of the firms, they're creating their own tools based on their own knowledge. So again, it's starting to think about what knowledge does your legal function have, and how can you start to finesse that and develop that for the tools. Because Copilot, just to take that tool, which we've rolled it out to the whole team now. We rolled it out at the end of November, and again we started with the same approach as the workshops to learn it, to find the use cases. Now with the Copilot agents which are coming in, again there's increased opportunity to develop specific legal tools, and I know that Microsoft are looking at specific use cases as well, which is very exciting. So I think it is definitely worth looking at what you can do within your function if the budget is limited, because they are so expensive, especially if you have Copilot. But then also just to pick up on what they said about the actual legal specific tools. Again, we demoed one 8 months ago, and then we're demoing another one, and the difference between how much they've come on in just 8 months is absolutely vast. So it's really just to get stuck in, get experimenting, get your team using it, and then kind of figuring out, does it add value? Is there that return on investment, and building out your use cases and your business cases?
Yeah, no, that's great advice, because I agree with you that it's a lot about diving in and learning, because it's progressing quickly, and the more you engage from the beginning, the more you can understand where it's going and what's going to be the right use case for your function. Marcelo,
Yeah, this is the topic of the year, the couple of years that we've been in, right? I think that there's such an energy around AI, and that energy can be positive in many ways, in a way that people feel curious, they feel creative, and they feel empowered with these capabilities, and they become more forward thinking and forward leaning, and they are willing to do some things that are new. I think that Copilot is such a great example. But I think that there's also an energy of fear, of anxiety, and that's hitting us across all levels, right? I think that there's the fear of like redundancies. There is the CEO approaching your GC and CLO asking like, what is legal doing? And what are you delivering through AI? And there's also the fact that, differently from other functions, we do not have the dollars to go jump in and build these sophisticated niche specific use cases for in-house teams, probably very differently from law firms. So I think that we find ourselves in a very interesting intersection, which is very challenging. I think that the best approach is really to take action and experiment. I think that's a great way for you to transform that potential energy and put it into motion, so that you dissipate that anxiety and you have people building the right muscles. So I think that from a behavioral point of view, if you have Microsoft Copilot available, jump on it, learn it, develop the skills, the mindsets, have people to make mistakes, learn the simple things. It's really about, again, building a muscle that none of us had a couple of years ago. And I think that the other angle is building the right data sets, as it was mentioned. One thing that we are doing, which is, again, like an investment for the future that also aligns with AI, is doubling down on knowledge management. And we have a program that we call it Legal Asset Management, where we are assetizing our legal services catalog with key capabilities that map to the deliverables that exist against those legal services, so that in the short term we can drive better standardization with those assets, but also in the future those assets can become the fuel for a more structured and accurate use case that is going to be supported by AI. My last thought on this is that we are beyond just looking at the niche legal AI use cases, and I would say that CLM is front and center on where we want to use it. We are also looking at opportunities to partner with our enterprise and business stakeholders with applications that belong to the enterprise, but we happen to be a part of the process. So as one example, we are a ServiceNow company, and we use ServiceNow in legal for a number of use cases that are not contract specific, like a CLM. And we are partnering with other functions to make use of AI that is available for that broader system that otherwise we would not have the ability to go and invest on our own. So looking at what is your company doing? What is it? Where is it that you have the early adopters in the enterprise? And just put your, like your high post there, see what they can do, what they learn, and what they bring back to you.
Thank you, Marcelo. I think those are excellent points. So we've gotten to the Q&A portion of our webinar. Let me take a look at the questions we have. We have a question on how can firms avoid a focus on measuring legal team performance, resulting in metric measurement rather than providing the best, more appropriate legal advice? What are you really measuring when your output is qualitative, risk-based advice? Who would like to tackle that question? I'll give you some initial thoughts. Look, absolutely, quality matters, and I think we have to maybe avoid thinking that everything's a widget, but at the same time, I think we need to move more to metric-based measurements of the things we do and our ability to show value to our clients in the way that almost every other corporate function operates inside of a company. Because I do think we have to be careful to say, well, what we do is so special you can't measure it. And anyway, that's my thought. There's a balance there. I understand the question that you don't want to get to such a point that people are not focused really that it's about quality, which absolutely matters. But I think we can measure more than we think we can. Anyway, with that, I'll leave it to the panel who wants to take their take on that question.
I can jump in quickly here. I think my mind goes back to if you don't manage, it's a hobby, or if you don't measure, it's a hobby, right? And I think that as legal managers, which, if you are an in-house professional, you are a legal manager, in some capacity, you need to think about the metrics that apply to the engagement. It's going to be very different depending on the legal service category. So if you're managing like mass litigation, mass employee litigation, mass consumer litigation, it's more measurable, it's repeatable, and you can find quality metrics to assess whether or not the work is being well done. If you're thinking about M&A, for example, it's going to be less repeatable. It's going to be a lot more custom, but still you can look at accuracy, you can look at risk, you can look at overall quality. And what I like to do is to sit down with practitioners and have a table of metrics that I can put in front of them to say, from what we are working with in partnership with this law firm, what are the metrics that you believe that would be applicable here? And you can talk about like resolution time, response time, availability, your own satisfaction, the communication, the improvement. So you just go through like potentially a list of like 15, 20 metrics, and you pressure test them to really be intentional about determining whether or not you can apply those to that engagement. And if there are like 5 that you cannot apply, but another 10 or so you should. And what I like to do is to create balanced scorecards so that for those services catalogs items that do have metrics, those start to be standardized across the legal team globally so that people can benefit from metrics work that has been done by the team elsewhere.
Can I just add to that as well? Just kind of linking to it, just kind of if we're thinking about that kind of proportional legal advice, like sometimes this stuff is so hard to measure, right? Because you're saying we're saving these kind of risks, but when they're not coming to fruition, like how can you really kind of say that or measure it? So I think that as I think Marcelo talked about, we too are looking at kind of taking on more risk, because that's the kind of the direction of the business, and they kind of want to be more agile. But I think one of the things that we're also thinking about doing, it's slightly different from the question, but it's about thinking about, if we are taking on more risks, actually then checking in back on those kind of contracts and then thinking, well, have you actually been making money on that contract? Was that kind of risks that we're taking with it? Were the mitigations in place? Are you actually keeping up with them? So it's also kind of, I guess, putting it back on the business and being like, if we're giving you these tools, if we're allowing you to take on real risk like you want us to, is that actually proportional? Is it worth it? And just actually checking in with that, rather than just kind of doing that thing where you've created a contract and you're done with it then.
Yeah, that's a good point, Isabel. And there was another follow-up question that talked about what are some of the key data metrics that people have found most helpful. So I don't know of Sophie and Hazel, if you guys have views on what have you measured that you have found to be most impactful or most significant?
Yeah, so the one about the risk has been quite successful in terms of avoided risks as well, particularly for some of the bigger and more precarious disputes that our team manages, has been a good to kind of measure what that would potentially have cost, but then what we settled for, or what we were able to claim back, or the use of our brand in a way that guarding against that and protecting our brand in particular locations, which enable us to do business in that particular region in future. It's almost sort of saying if there's a particular thing that the team does, then there's probably a metric for it. But I think it is quite difficult to determine what is important to your stakeholders. So I think it's probably let's go back to the user. It's a subjective question, because sometimes you can ask, for example, our CEO, what's important to her. She will say, I know you add value. I just want to ensure that the team is being as efficient as it can. Because a lot of the stuff that the team does do, particularly when you're working at the really, really strategic, high stakes level, and it's government affairs, it's that whole navigating complexity and doing things which perhaps have never been done. It's not going to be in a GenAI tool yet. It might have some good examples of what you could do, but a lot of this is talking to people. It's just navigating that. It's not high. And how do you show value? And I think it is just about building that relationship. I think the metric stuff, you can get metrics for anything, and it just really depends what your business. You're at the end of the day, why are you needing those metrics? It's to show value, but what does your stakeholder value, basically, and then you'll get a metric from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, I'm sensitive that we're at 2 minutes. There's a number of other questions, and one of the ways I'm going to respond to one of the questions is people wanted to get a copy of your metrics, Marcelo. But I said, one of the nice things about the legal industry generally is people are fairly open to sharing best practices, things they've learned, metrics. So if somebody has said something that is of interest to you, that you'd like to further pursue, ask their opinion, feel free to reach out. I'm sure everybody who participated in this panel is more than happy to share some of the things that they've learned over the course, and some of the things that they're doing. I think that's always one of the great things about this profession. And there's some organizations that tend to post metrics about what are commonly things measured for legal functions and the like, that are also good sources of information. But given that we are on the final countdown here, I want to really thank our panelists for today's session. I think everybody had great knowledge that they shared, lots of interesting things that they're doing within their respective companies. And I think, this is going to be a very interesting industry moving forward. And so I think we're all looking forward to seeing how legal operations can continue to drive real value and change. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for the lawyer as well. Much appreciated. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.